Indeed, Poonam. Yes, viewers, on India Upfront tonight, the big story as always. On Tuesday, the central government announced a radical reform for the youth of this country. You all heard the grand announcement. A short-term recruitment scheme for the armed forces called Agnipath. Under this scheme, youth who will be christened Agniveer will get a chance to serve Bharat for at least 4 years. After 4 years, 25% of these youth will be retained and others would be let go, but will get preferential placement in paramilitary service and other divisions of the government. That is, of course, if they so wish to avail of opportunities. If not, they can even get a loan to start a business. 2 days after that announcement, at least 7 states across the country have witnessed dramatic protests against it. Vehicles set ablaze, and you can see the mayhem on your screens. Tires burnt on the roads, railway tracks uprooted, train stations ransacked, trains destroyed, public transport laid to waste, and even policemen attacked during the violent protests. It's becoming some kind of pattern, viewers, where anyone who has a grievance takes to the streets and starts a violent protest, destroying public property and sometimes targeting law enforcement. Sometimes, of course, that all leads to unwanted casualties. From Haryana to Rajasthan to Uttar Pradesh, the violence has spread like wildfire. Even Madhya Pradesh and Delhi were caught in the crosshair of this protest. The states that witnessed the worst of it all were the Hindi heartland states, especially Bihar, across the state where there were reports of arson coming in, and the BJP bore the brunt of it all. Its office, in fact, in Nevada district in Bihar, ransacked and set ablaze, a murderous assault on one of its MLAs where her car was attacked and vandalized. All of this happened in Bihar. Now listen in to the BJP MLA who fears for her life.
आज हम लोग के साथ घटना हुआ, हम लोग आ रहे थे नवादा, और नवादा में हम लोग के पता नहीं था कि इस तरह के मैंने सब अच्छी धरना दिया हुआ है, चाहे तो ऊपर कर रहा है, हम लोग के पते नहीं था कि हल्ला हंगामा हो रहा है, तो हम नहीं आते। हम लोग अचानक आए, उसके बाद झंडा बोर्ड नोचे फेंक दिया और ईंटा पत्थर बरसाने लगा पूरा। अभी भी ईंटा जो है 3-4 गो गाड़ी के अंदर है, शीशा पूरा चूर दिया, बॉडी चूर दिया, गाड़ी के अंदर बांस है और गार्ड के चोट लगा, ड्राइवर के लगा, हम लोग के लगा, इतना ने ईंटा बरसाने लगा ने कि कुछ कह नहीं सकते। प्रशासन के तो एसपी साहब ने किए 2 घंटा हो गया फोन करना, तो कोई रिस्पॉन्स नहीं मिला, और वो बोले कि ठीक है हम डीएसपी साहब से बात करते हैं, तो हम ही लोग भी सुरक्षित है, तो हमको भी क्या सुरक्षित रहेंगे।
But viewers, the basic question is this an entirely spontaneous protest? Or are, in at least a large measure, these protests being instigated, for example, by the government's political adversaries, who might be stirring the pot and dispensing disinformation to brainwash the youth? While, viewers, some parties are openly hitting the streets to protest, others are busy weaponizing the youth to stir trouble on their behalf. Yes, on their behalf, even guaranteeing protection against arrest and a law and order repercussion. If you don't believe me, watch this. This is exclusive to Times Now. We infiltrated a public meeting. This is what we heard.
हिंदुस्तान में एकमात्र बिहार विधानसभा है जहां आर्मी बहाली की मुद्दा उठी थी और उठाने वाला मेरा वीडियो निकाल करके आप चेक कर सकते हैं कि मैंने आर्मी बहाली की मुद्दा उठाया था कि नहीं उठाया। ये चेक करने वाली बात है, और इसलिए हमारा भी स्वार्थ है। हमारा क्या स्वार्थ है? हमारा इतना ही स्वार्थ है कि इस लड़ाई में आपका पसीना बहेगा, इस लड़ाई में पसीना बहेगा। आने वाली पीढ़ियां ये जब मिट्टी उठाएगी, उस मिट्टी से जो खुशबू आएगी, आपके पसीने की खुशबू होगी, और उस खुशबू में हमारे भी पसीने की खुशबू रहे। हमारा स्वागत। और मैं समझता हूँ कि जो सीधे तरीके से कल आप लोग भाग लेंगे, और एसपी हो या डीएम हो, आप अगर जो सीधे तरीके से शांतिपूर्ण तरीके से भाग लेंगे, तो मैं दावा के साथ कहता हूं आपके ऊपर प्रशासन की हिम्मत नहीं होगी हाथ उठाने की। अगर हाथ उठेगी तो सबसे पहले मेरे ऊपर हाथ उठाना पड़ेगा, इसके बाद आप मेरे ऊपर हाथ उठाएंगे।
Another reform, another attempt to try and capitalize on this particular reform, or like in the past, the Kisan laws, the CAA laws, to try and create a narrative of disenchantment. Now, viewers, it's not as if this particular reform is being tried out only in India. The world's leading military powers haven't already experimented with this. They have, viewers. They've got a system of recruitment similar to the Agnipath scheme. And here are some hard facts which I'm going to take you through. Let's look at the case of United States. 14 lakh soldiers, recruitment on a voluntary basis, personnel again enrolled for just 4 years. Let's press the continue button on that graphic. And then 4 years of reserve duty, after which they can opt for full service, eligible for pension after 20 years of service. So this is the United States model. In China, recruitment on conscription model with 4.5 lakh inductees per year. So again, this number is greater than in India. Conscripts must serve for 2 years, basic training of just 40 days. In India, it will be 6 months. Unknown number of soldiers retained for full service. Of course, China, closed state, closed society, so we don't quite know. But post-demobilization, tax benefits and discounted loans for soldiers. So once again, an incentive is built into this, which is also the case here under Agnipath. Let's look at France. 1 year renewable contract to 5-year contracts. It's a contract system. Soldiers are given training for 3 months and state pension for those who serve for over 19 years. Not anyone who moves out after the 5-year contract, but once you complete 19 years. In Russia, a hybrid model of conscription and contractual service. There it is on your screens. Conscripts get 1 year of training followed by a year of service. Recruitment of soldiers is done from these conscripts, preferential admissions to universities for soldiers, and, viewers, finally, soldiers can undertake education in military institutions. So there is an incentive and it is being built in. Watch the issue. I want to open this up. Let's begin with some of those who speak today from the opposition, from those who have a problem with this scheme. Dr. Shashi Panja, Minister in charge, Department of Women and Child Development and Social Welfare, National Spokesperson of the TMC, is with us. I want to ask you, Dr. Panja, is this another attempt to derail a well-intentioned reform brought about after consultation with stakeholders?
No. Actually, all of us are still trying to get the hang of it. And we feel that there are introduction of plenty of schemes which really don't fructify later. I mean, this government has brought in lots of experiments, starting from, it may be in the form of schemes, it may be in the form of recruitments, it may be something like a demonetization exercise, or a hurriedly pushed in GST exercise, which we are still fighting with. So there seems to be, similarly, something that you're not prepared for. And something which, of course, you are saying that the army has, of course, gone through the discussions, etc. But, these recruitments are something which the young of the country look forward to, to be in the army, the navy, or the air forces. Now, some somehow there have been these introduction of limitations now, the age, etc. And this 4 years thing, in which, I mean, what is the time you spend for the training of the recruits, and then you are just, maybe they will be just there for 3 years, and then they become suddenly from a, something from the armed forces to being a civilian. So what about, retaining what you have learned and the training? So somehow there is a perception that even that one rank, one pension, or the defense pension bill, everything has met with resistance, and things which were promised and nothing really came out for the benefit of those. And here we have another one.
No, but are you basing your... sorry, Dr. Panja, are you just basing this on perception, or is there some example that you can give me which suggests that there will be a problem? I've just read you some hard facts, the example of other military powers where similar schemes exist, and they are doing perfectly well. China, of course, you claim, not I. You claim, the opposition claims, is so effective that it has succeeded in taking over Indian land. So there must be a great fighting force, number one. Number two, you have the United States that goes in and uses its tomahawk, quite literally, to flatten its opponents, to putty. And they are also following this model. You have France, on who we rely on for the best defense equipment, and the United Nations relies on for peacekeepers. Look what they did in Syria. So I am not understanding, where is the specificity in your response? Give me a couple of specific examples.
Maybe Russia itself, that even they had this kind of a hybrid model. And were they so well trained to even, handle Ukraine? So that is like one of the examples. If you keep somebody for such a small time. Or maybe when India saw the performance of the reservists during the 1971 war. So we see, who doesn't want the good of the nation? We all want the good of the nation. And the duty of the opposition is just not to oppose. The idea is that somehow we feel that
so you're saying Russia and our reservists back in time let the side down, so we should not therefore go in for this model. That's what basically you're saying. It will lead to a weak armed forces. Okay, let's get that one point on the board and let's discuss that. Dr. Trivedi, would you like to respond? You're creating a weak conscript contract army that is going to melt away in the face of any intimidation or any incursion or any conflict.
There are two basic dimensions on which the opposition is raising the issue. One is the issue of the efficacy of the army, and another is the issue of the jobs. On the efficacy of army, one point has already been raised by you. Out of the 5-6 most powerful countries in the world, can they name a single country which is not having a similar type of arrangement or not? Second thing, we are considered as the youngest nation in the world, but our army is not youngest. So the opportunity is being given that those who can come, serve, and then can go back. And the issue is, if I ask anybody in the panel, which is the minimum age for any job, other than the soldier, all other jobs are having the minimum age is 21 years. So for 80% of the jobs, the minimum age is 21 years. By that time, if somebody enters, and if I ask, is there any job in the country which is at the age of 17 and a half? No. So a person is entering, and by the time he is eligible for a normal, any usual job, he is having an experience. He is having, if it's 10th pass, he is already having a 12th pass certificate. If he would have been sitting at the home for 2 years, he had devoted to the studies of getting 12th pass. So just for extra 2 years, he is having the salary, he is having the experience, he is having the expertise, and with 11.5 lakh rupees in hand, and practically since before 21 anybody cannot get married, so other than a very few cases in which the financial burden of the family would have been better, otherwise 80 to 90% of salary is saving, so practically he is having 20 lakhs or more. और कितने ही बच्चे ऐसे होते हैं जो कहते हैं इंजीनियरिंग मेडिकल में इसलिए एडमिशन नहीं मिल पाया कि मेरे फैमिली के पास 10 लाख 15 लाख देने को नहीं था, जो उनके हैंड में होगा. When they are at the age of entering into a usual job, other than the state governments and the central governments and others which will be giving benefit, and in the paramilitary forces and other police services, they will be by default better equipped than any of the other person who is competing with them in the open examination. And now coming to other, why is the need of this young force? Colonel R.S.N. Singh ji is there, he is well versed in these type of things. Now when the war will be there, it not be the war like we have fought in 71 or even in 99. It will be the hybrid war. When this time the war will be there will be a cyber attack on all our systems, whether the banking system, the transportation system and others. So that even the army is developing the cyber cell also. So our youth, which is very equipped in those things, if they get an expertise of a 6 month or 1 year,
yes,
then they can have a better hybrid war, like the drones. They were not there 20 years back. So if you want to really tackle a war in the modern circumstances, I think the induction of youth and training of them will be much better. And when they will be going out in any part of the society, there will be a disciplined, dedicated nationalist section of the society that will be altogether good. So where is the problem? It's not saying
where is the problem, says the BJP. Where is the problem? Where is the problem, says the BJP. Okay, Sanjay Jha, where is the problem? I want to open this up right after to Dr. Anand Ranganathan and Colonel RSN. Yes, Sanjay Jha, where's the problem? You know, you talk about the fact that there's a lack of employment opportunities. The government says we are going to guarantee you employment and give you a corpus of 11.71 lakhs. What are you complaining about?
Well, Rahul, let me just give you a response, 3 very short points. Number 1, and I'm not going to quote anybody else, but I'm going to quote members of the defense services serving current or retired. Let me quote to you Lieutenant General Harwat Singh, Indian Army Deputy Chief of Staff, who's on record, and I have read these reports in great detail, who's mentioned, where will this lead to any motivation when a person joins knowing that his tenure in all probability will be limited to just 4 years? And that is his statement. There are others who have said, is the government going to treat the Indian, of non-officer rank army as tourist soldiers or as part of an adventure camp? I think these are serious statements.
No, who is saying this? Tourist soldiers, who is saying it?
These are a whole series of people in reports.
Tell me,
I can send it to you.
Name them.
Well, I've already mentioned to you Lieutenant General Harwat Singh, a Deputy Indian Chief of Staff, who's been extremely critical of this. Now let me finish my sentence.
Name the others.
Let me finish my statement.
No, because I'll tell you, because on my show and through the day on this channel and through other days, we've also had several top military strategists and veterans who are defending this. So where is this straw poll number? That overwhelmingly the Congress says, overwhelmingly unanimous view among veterans that the scheme is bad.
Pro or against.
Well, Rahul, for God's sake, can we do one thing? I don't want to make a statement on your show because I respect you and I respect your channel, that we all can be very guilty of selective cherry picking. So let's not go down that road. Let me make the second very pertinent point for the debate. The government says we need to cut down on our pension bill. Fair enough. You need to worry about your finances. But this is the same government, Rahul, and I've debated this with you on your program, that gave the corporate sector, I remember Nirmala Sitharaman's flamboyant press conference, 1,45,000 crore of a tax bonanza to Indian corporate sector. You know what she said then? This is going to result in a revolution of jobs. So what do you do here? You're actually giving money, taking money away from what could be India's soldiers, giving it to India's corporates, many of them which are, by the way, billionaires, and some of them are richest in the world, and they haven't even created jobs. And you're taking it away from the Indian army. This is a party, Sudhanshu ji's party, that talks of national security. It's like telling Sudhanshu ji today, Sudhanshu ji, आपसे मैं यह प्रश्न पूछना चाहूंगा, यदि भाजपा आपको कहे कि आप प्रवक्ता सिर्फ 3 महीने के लिए रहेंगे, तो आपका क्या मनोबल बढ़ जाएगा? आपका हौसला अफजाई बढ़ जाएगा? क्या आप टीवी चैनल पर आके ऐसे ही बात करेंगे?
If there is a criticism against this government, it is that they give too much largesse, too much to farmers, too much to the poorest of the poor, too many subsidies, too much free food. That is what people are also saying. But I want to ask you a more fundamental question. Manish Tiwari says the following.
Can I say one thing, Rahul?
Yes, Dr. Trivedi, go ahead. Make your
one
point.
line to Sanjay ji.
Yes.
Sanjay ji, please do not take it personally, but you have given an example that kya 3 mahine ke liye rahenge. I remember when you started coming on the television channel as for the favor of Congress party, you didn't start directly as a spokesperson. You were representing the hamaracongress.com. And by witnessing your performance, the Congress has given you a spokesperson post. There were so many other people were there who were also coming, but you got the opportunity. So where is the problem in that?
सुधांशु जी, अब प्रॉब्लम क्या है कि आप कह रहे हैं कि 75% लोगों को तो आप हटा दे रहे हैं, उनको घर भेज रहे हैं आप।
ओके।
तो देखिए, इस तरीके से मैं समझता हूं कि आप भारत की सेना की बात कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि कॉर्पोरेट सेक्टर को कोई फ्रंट लाइन।
Let me talk about. Let me say, viewers, you see, like Sanjay Jha points to.
Rahul.
Yes, sir.
No.
One.
And I would also like to come in.
Yeah, 1 second.
One sentence.
Yeah.
Sir, Sanjay Jha ji, क्या हमारी आर्मी में सारे परमानेंट सोल्जर्स थे? Was not the short service commission? The short service commission was 7 years. So if you say that in 7 years there will be no motivation, there will be motivation, for 4 years there will be no motivation. And the practical problem is, for 7 years the 2 years training was there. So जब वो 1928 में आता था, तो 9 years, यानी 28, 29, he's having with no opportunity for any job. He has to fall under the category of ex-serviceman and without any pension. तो भाई ये तो already था. Just reducing 7 years to 4 years has become a problem. I don't subscribe to this logic.
And
सुधांशु जी, 6 महीने को तो तैयार हो जाएगा, 6 महीने में,
Sanjay
6
ji, 1
महीने में को
second.
तैयार हो
And let me
जाएगा।
just point out, viewers, I gave you some examples. United States, 4 years. Also, China, 2 years. They are no less motivated. If you believe the Congress party, they have made Modi surrender. In fact, said Surinder Modi, if I'm not mistaken. This is the Congress party. Russia, hybrid model. Again, viewers, 1 year of training followed by a year of service. Everyone would run away from the battlefield. That's not quite happening. 1 second. And let me ask one second. And I want to open this up a little further. 1 second, sir. 1 second. I'll come back to you. We are not running away. 1 second, sir. Sanjay ji, 1 minute, please. Manish Tiwari, who is your colleague in the Congress party, says, I do empathize with youth who have concerns over Agnipath recruitment process. Reality is India needs a young armed force with lighter human footprint, savvy on technology, equipped with state-of-art weaponry. Armed Forces of Union shouldn't be an employment guarantee program. Your own party member.
But that's exactly my point. The BJP is making it into
No, what are you saying? He's actually saying it's a very good idea.
Well, he may be my colleague. He's, by the way, very dear friend. I don't have to agree with him.
No, so you don't. So similarly, when you say all army personnel, no, Sanjay Jha, a few army personnel, and they're entitled to their views. There will always be a few people who may have a problem with a scheme or two, but to make it and sort of suggest that the youth of this country are going to go to waste after 4 years. Let me bring in Dr. Ranganathan.
Do you honestly believe yourself that 6 months of training is adequate exposure to be ready fighting for the country?
Let me tell you, we have Colonel RSN here with us. We have Colonel RSN. It's not a break really from the tradition that is still followed. I'll bring him in on this point. If your point is that 6 months of training can't produce a dedicated fighting force, I'll get him to speak about that. But first, let me bring in Dr. Ranganathan, and after that, Colonel RSN. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan.
Good evening, Rahul, and good evening to all my fellow panelists. I've been listening very patiently to the others, so can I please expect the courtesy of a couple of minutes uninterrupted. Rahul, speaking as a layman, because the good colonel is there to speak as a professional, as an expert, I support the Agniveer scheme for the following reasons. One, the chiefs of all 3 wings of our armed forces are supporting it enthusiastically. And across decades, across different governments, I cannot think of a single instance where our chiefs have knowingly taken a decision not in the interest of either the armed forces or the nation. It follows that if they are supporting a recruitment scheme, they would have banged their heads together on this one and ironed out all the possible impediments. Number 2, and this was emphasized by the late General Rawat, the armed forces are not employment scheme. They are not Manrega. I'm sorry. In fact, they should be, and they are, one of the toughest forces and places to gain entry. Only the best should be chosen, and once they are routinely tested so that they remain the best. It follows that if our military feels that there should be multiple rounds of merit-based competition, by all means, it should be encouraged to implement such a policy. I repeat, you are joining the defense forces, not a government employment scheme like Manrega. Number 3, such recruitment schemes are followed by many nations. India is not an exception. You've already quoted China, Russia, France, and USA. Number 4, the world over, you want the youngest, the fittest, the best to be trained for all future eventualities as begets their fate as well as the fate of the nation. The UPSC and the IITs have a multi-level selection process. So why shouldn't the armed forces? Number 5, as far as the scheme now is concerned, you have a merit-based inclusion, after which you are trained for 4 years, at the end of which you accumulate more than 10 lakhs and you get an opportunity to further compete for a position in the defense forces. For those who do not succeed at this second step, they come out of it with a degree, 10 lakhs, and a glowing certificate of having served the country when so young and inculcated the values of discipline and national service cherished by all Indians. And as many states are now clamoring to, they are saying they are going to induct them in other artillery forces as well. Like for example, CRPF and other Jawans and other police forces. I can't think of better ticks on the CV of a 21-year-old than this. Can you? Number 6. As for those worried that the trained and the battle-ready rejected at the second round would be instead recruited by underworld and terror organizations, I'm sorry, but this is ridiculous. As ridiculous as saying, once rejected for the national team for Olympic boxing or shot put, the tens of thousands of pugilists and shot putters would be recruited by stone pelters and thugs. Number 7, let's not go blindly by the naysayers, because remember, their Modi hatred made them oppose even the toilets for the poor. And finally, Rahul, just 30 seconds, 8. A word of caution. Rahul, we have seen how this government repeatedly brings great schemes and policies, but then in reaction to opposition prodding and street violence, hastily retreats. Farm laws being just one glaring example. So who knows? This government might take back this scheme too, which would be a pity.
It would be a pity, and I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm worried that it might be actually being set into process, because, viewers, I haven't heard one opposition party coming out and saying this violence is unacceptable. Have you? Have you heard any opposition party making that statement? End the violence? No. Whether it is CAA, whether it is the latest round of protests over blasphemous remarks that were made by Nupur Sharma, allegedly, number 3, viewers, whether it was the Hanuman Jayanti or the Ram Navami celebrations, no opposition party has come out and said abjure violence. We won't stand for it. So I'm worried. And the government has caved in. A few flames and the government runs. And I'm worried, viewers, that another policy might actually be consumed by these flames that are being fanned. And I just gave you an example of a political party that is an ally, or at least fought the elections with the RJD and the Congress in Bihar, giving a whole sermon to the youth and saying, join us and we will protect you. You join us, but be peaceful, join us. Once they are there, viewers, we don't know which way this will go. Dr. Ranganathan, yes, very quickly, I want to bring in Colonel Arison. Yes.
Rahul, even I want to...
Yeah, 1 second. Yes.
We want to say something.
No,
yeah.
Yes, I just want to finish by saying that can I please ask the good Dr. Sudhanshu Trivedi one question. Sudhanshu ji, आप जानते हैं जब फार्म लॉज रिपील हुए थे मोदी जी ने क्या कहा था? मैं आपसे पॉइंट ब्लैंक पूछना चाहता हूं कि अब कभी 8 बजे मोदी जी ये तो नहीं कहेंगे कि मैंने आर्म फोर्सेस के लिए ये स्कीम लगाई थी लेकिन मैं देश के हित के लिए स्कीम वापस.
Dr. Ranganathan, you have a question in every show.
Okay.
देखिए, फार्म लॉ के अंदर कुछ इस प्रकार के एलिमेंट चले गए थे जो आपको भी दिखाई पड़ रहा था. मैं सिर्फ सिंपल बात कहता हूं, फार्म लॉ का सबसे ज्यादा विरोध कहां हुआ था? पंजाब में. सबसे ज्यादा उस विरोध के साथ कौन खड़ा था? कांग्रेस और अकाली. अब ये देखिए, इसको आप इंटरेस्टिंग फैक्ट भी कहेंगे. एंड द ओनली गवर्नमेंट विच हैज पास द फार्म लॉ इन देयर विधानसभा वाज आम आदमी पार्टी. And what you can say, Aam Aadmi Party swept the poll and Akali Dal and Congress routed. And the biggest leader of the farmers, I'm not naming because I do not want to name anybody, he lost his security deposits. And the biggest leader of Uttar Pradesh farmers, उनको अपने गांव में वोट नहीं मिले उतने जितने लोग उनकी पंचायत में आते थे. So that shows the difference between what the ecosystem is projecting and what the ground reality.
Colonel, can 6 months of training produce good fighters who will lay down their lives for India? I want you to just also think about the Israel model, viewers, before I get you Colonel R.S.N. Singh's response. The country, as you know, is swamped by hostile nations. It has done a fantastic job of defending its borders. It has a conscription system where all adults, women and men, mandatorily have to serve for 32 months and women for 24 months. Post this service, they are put in a reserve list and can be recalled for active duty at any point. And they're only given basic training. All of them don't turn out to be terrorists in the hands of, the Hezbollah to blow up their own country. That doesn't happen. So let's first put that to rest. But on this issue of efficiency, efficacy, courage, motivation, Colonel R.S.N., over to you.
No, before I give you a specific answer to your specific question, allow me to comment on these visuals, on this demonstration or protests or, arson, violence and arson. Now, I saw this fellow, so-called leader of CPI-ML, which is a semi-political route adopted by the Naxalites. Very close, I have seen them working together at night, right? Now this fellow is, giving a clarion call that everybody should join him, in protest. And now let me tell you what the Naxalites and the CPI-ML has done with the armed forces. They kidnapped an ex-soldier from my unit and took a ransom of 10 lakh from his brother, who's a group captain in the Air Force. His name is R.K. Prasad. This group captain, he went to the DG police, he went to the Jharkhand government, of no avail, and he had to arrange the money to get him free. This is the record of CPI-ML and the brothers, the Naxalite brothers. Air Marshal LaFontaine, Air Chief, kidnapped and robbed by these elements, not once, but twice. In the Red Corridor, the families of our Jawans are not, they are subject to extortion. So if these kind of people are at the forefront of these kind of protests with this kind of an anti-national ideological baggage, I don't want such people. Anybody who is indulging in this kind of an arson and destroying the property of his own country is not recruitable. Is not recruitable. I joined NDA at the age of 16 and a half. I never threw, I've never destroyed, any government property. If I see an unclean toilet, I try to clean it myself in the train. So it requires a lot of character to be a soldier. And I'm sure nobody in this panel, and including the anchor, has ever destroyed government property. Look at the faces of these fellows. Do they look recruitable? I would rather have a man with character for 4 years than to have a characterless fellow for a long haul. Now coming to your answer to your specific question. Is it unprecedented? Nonsense. We have had many schemes. I'll start from Second World War when the British raised an army of 2.5 million, 25 lakhs. They served only for 4 years and they were sent out without pension, without any benefits. They were not rehabilitated by any government. Some of them were in the forefront. of the revolt in Punch. Many of them were responsible for lending their military weight for the creation of Pakistan. So this is not unprecedented. The second is, have you forgotten Emergency Commission? Now people, veterans who are listening to me, don't talk nonsense. You recruited people. Do you know, Rahul, that there were pilots who were recruited who didn't fly even 4 hours? And they retired in 80s. Some of them, they never came from home and yet kept getting their pay. And then, you are talking about 4 years is too less, 2 months, how much training, then there will be, and all this. आपका दिल उस समय कहाँ चला गया था जब when you were taking this, officers for 5 years, short service commission from OTA Chennai? I was an instructor in Officers Training Academy Chennai, and within 9 months, I can vouch for my cadets. Most of them are in service. They are doing as well. And then what was your logic then? Because it's a pyramidal structure, so you require a lot of people in the base. So nobody disputed it. And then what you did is that you said that I don't require one OTA, I require more than one OTA. So there was an Officers Training Academy recently in Gaya 4 or 5 years back. Now you say these guys, they'll not be trained. 6 months of training is too less. They're not. Arey bhai, जब 5 साल के लिए आप इनको लेते थे, तो उस समय did you feel that these are officers who are going to lead men into war? We have also learnt over the years. Before you do a young officers course, I didn't know most of the things. Before I did my battalion support weapons course, I didn't know about mortars or a medium machine gun or recoilless guns. The second aspect is that he was absolutely right. This is not a Manrega scheme. There are in a ship there are stations, that designated stations. So you require a specific manpower. You can't say that, on this ship I will not have 20, I'll have 40 stations. So your strength is a function of technology. For example, you had this recoilless gun, and this is also an irony, by the way.
Okay.
That we were firing 106 millimeter RCL. RCL in 65 war against patent tank, both the weapons, tank and anti-tank systems made by Americans. But what the larger point is that it is technology specific. If you have an anti-tank system, it may require man portable. You may just require one man. So who are you to decide? The third aspect is that I am telling you that a lot of people said, our Jawans come from rural areas and, and all that.
Okay.
अब बताइए कहाँ ये दिल्ली के आसपास rural area का बताइए आप कहाँ पे है rural area? You call a man from Meerut or Ghaziabad from rural area. I come from Bihar. In my village, there are 5 school buses coming every day. There is 24/7 electricity. There is television in every house. Every house has a motorcycle. And when I say this, I say for 90% of the Bihar. So please change your mindset. Your sister news publication just carried out a news that 1,400 engineers have been recruited as sub-inspectors in UP police. Things have changed. The socio-economic conditions have changed.
Okay.
And
well,
if we don't bother about the defense budget, then who will?
Okay.
Who will?
I think
ultimately there has to be a defense budget, and there will always be a debate. There will always be a debate between pension salary.
Colonel RSN, Sanjay Jha wants to respond to you very quickly, and after that I'm going to move on to the next big subject from the Supreme Court viewers. Yes, very quickly, Sanjay Jha.
Rahul, 2 short points. Number 1, the government, instead of saying I need to create a new scheme for military recruitment to cut down on pensions, should have actually looked at a more dynamic and progressive taxation in India.
Number 2, Sanjay Jha's view.
Number
Once
two,
Sanjay
no,
Jha's
I'm
view
speaking
and you're
on behalf.
entitled to it.
I'm speaking on behalf of the opposition as well. Number two, very critical. All the violence that has happened today has happened mostly in BJP-ruled states.
Again,
Bihar,
BJP,
Madhya Pradesh,
BJP,
Jharkhand,
BJP,
and Uttarakhand.
BJP.
These have happened in
not Congress.
BJP-ruled
Sir,
states.
your own cadre.
It is a spontaneous,
One second, your own cadre today. Don't
It is a
speak about
spontaneous
violence and
uprising.
igniting passions. Have you seen what your own cadre has done? Your own senior leader, Renuka Chaudhary, beating up police officers in Hyderabad? Is that BJP rule? Listen, let's get this high
Let
horse.
me tell you one thing, Rahul.
Sanjay
The
Jha, on
violence
this
is
point, I don't
spontaneous.
want
It is
this.
not politically
I don't want
motivated.
anyone
It is
to
not
try
politically
and
motivated.
rationalize.
The young are restless and angry.
I'm sorry,
because
sir.
they don't have jobs.
I'm sorry, sir.
They don't have jobs.
If you give people the license, your crew today, your Congress crew, is restless and angry because it doesn't have power, and it says that we are going to burn the country, and you've done it successfully. Look at your leaders. There they are on the camera. For what?
Rahul, why aren't there lady police officers
Please
around
don't
us?
do this. Let's not
Why
do
are there
this.
lady
Let's
police officers
not
around
make a
Renuka ji?
political meal out of violence.
Mr. Shivashankar,
One
the
second,
questions
ma'am.
still remain.
Everyone needs to speak unitedly to tell any mob to go back home. There is no room for mob violence in our democracy. I've said it once, I've said it many times. We have seen what
We are not
happens
talking about.
when mobs overrun the streets. We are not Libya under Gaddafi. We are not. Let's not
Mr.
make
Modi's
people
government
think
needs to know
that
that.
that is exactly where we are. We are not, viewers. We all have a voice. I'm leaving it at this. Violence, bloodletting, we know what Gandhiji said. We know. The Congress party that has made a hash of the Satyagraha, mocked it, cannot sit here and talk about violence. Should be the last political party to do so. I want to move on.